The knocking started at 11:47 p.m. 3 sharp raps that pulled me from the edge of sleep where I'd been staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster like I did most nights. I knew it was her before I opened the door because she was the only person in the building who'd knock that late without apology. Emily from 3C, the news director with the heels that clicked past my door every morning at 5:15, back every night around 9, sometimes later. We'd lived on the same floor for 8 months and exchanged maybe 30 words total, most of them about the building's broken elevator. She stood in the hallway in gray slacks and a silk blouse that looked expensive even to someone who bought his shirts in 3-packs. Her dark hair was pulled back tight, and there were shadows under her eyes that didn't come from one bad night. "I need your help," she said. Not, "I'm sorry to bother you," or "I know it's late." Just the ask, direct and urgent. I glanced past her toward her apartment door, expecting to see water pooling in the hallway or smell gas. "What's wrong?" "My kitchen sink. There's water everywhere and I can't get it to stop." She paused, and something shifted in her expression. "I called the emergency maintenance line 20 minutes ago. They said someone would come in the morning." Morning was 8 hours away. I looked down at my hands. The permanent grease stains under my nails that never quite washed out. The calluses from years of gripping pipe wrenches and threading galvanized steel. She didn't know what I used to do. Nobody in this building did. To them, I was just the quiet guy from the car wash who picked up his daughter from daycare every afternoon at 4. "Let me grab my tools," I said. Her apartment was 3 doors down but felt like a different world. Everything was clean lines and neutral tones, the kind of space that looked like it came from a magazine. The kitchen was an open concept design that flowed into the living room, and sure enough, there was water spreading across the tile floor from under the sink cabinet. I knelt down and opened the cabinet doors. The P-trap had come completely loose, and water was streaming from the pipe junction. A slower leak had probably been going for days based on the water damage to the cabinet bottom, but something had shifted tonight to make it catastrophic. "How bad is it?" She stood behind me, arms crossed. "The connection failed." I reached in and shut off the water supply valve, and the stream stopped immediately. "Did you put anything heavy in here recently? Store cleaning supplies?" "Just the usual stuff." Her voice was tight. "Can you fix it?" I sat back on my heels and looked at the damage. The cabinet bottom was warped, and I could see black mold starting in the corners. The P-trap itself was old enough that the threads were stripped. This wasn't a quick fix. This was a rebuild that should have been done by building maintenance months ago. "I can stop the immediate problem tonight," I said. "But you're going to need a full replacement of this section. The wood's compromised. How long will that take?" "For a professional? 2 hours, maybe 3 if they're careful." I pulled out the damaged P-trap and set it aside. "I can rig something temporary so you have running water, but you'll need to call maintenance again in the morning and make them prioritize it." I worked in silence, using the basic tools I'd grabbed from my apartment to create a temporary seal. She stood nearby, not hovering but not leaving either. I was aware of her watching me work with the same focus I imagined she used in her newsroom, assessing and calculating. When I finished, I tested the seal by turning the water back on slowly. No leaks. It would hold for a few days if she was careful. "Thank you." She handed me a towel without being asked. "What do I owe you?" "Nothing. We're neighbors." Her eyes narrowed slightly, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "You knew exactly what to do. You've done this before." I wiped my hands on the towel and started putting my tools back in the small bag. "I fixed a few sinks." "That's not what I meant." She leaned against the counter, studying me. "You work at the car wash on Connecticut Avenue, right? I've seen you there." So she'd noticed me too. I wondered what she saw. Just another guy in a uniform spraying down Audis and BMWs or something else. Yeah, I said. Pays the bills. The silence stretched between us, and I had the sense she was deciding something. Finally, she said, I have another problem. A bigger one. I waited. My mother's being scammed. A romance scam. She met someone online 3 months ago. A man who claims he's an investment banker in London. He's been asking for money. Small amounts at first, then larger. She's already sent him $40,000. Emily's voice was steady, professional, but her hands were gripping the counter edge. Yesterday, he convinced her to wire her entire retirement savings, $240,000. The transfer is set to process in 72 hours. I set down my tool bag slowly. Did you call the police? Yes. They said they'd open an investigation, but these scams are international and hard to trace. By the time they freeze anything, the money will be gone. She looked at me directly. I need to stop the wire transfer, and I need to prove to my mother that this man isn't real. She won't listen to me. She thinks I'm trying to control her life. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the first person in this building who's helped me without expecting something in return. She pushed off from the counter. And because I'm desperate enough to ask a neighbor I barely know for help with something the police can't fix. The smart thing would have been to say no, to tell her this was way beyond a broken sink and wish her luck. But there was something in the way she held herself, that combination of strength and exhaustion, that reminded me of the last time someone had needed me, and I hadn't been there. What's his name? I asked. The scammer? David Mitchell. He sent her photos, love letters, voice messages. He's thorough. Do you have access to everything he sent her? Emily pulled out her phone and opened a folder. I copied all of it yesterday when she was at her book club. She doesn't know I have it. I looked through the messages and photos. Standard romance scam playbook. Stock photos of a silver-haired businessman in expensive suits. Messages that escalated from friendly to intimate, to desperate for money. The financial requests followed a pattern. Investment opportunity, sick relative, travel costs to come meet her. The wire transfer, I said. Which bank? First National. My mother's had her account there for 30 years. I handed back the phone. I can't promise anything, but I might be able to help. I'll need to see all the documentation, the wire transfer details, the email trail, everything. Why would you do this? The question came out sharp, almost suspicious. I picked up my tool bag and met her eyes. Because someone should. That was 3 days ago. Now I was standing in her apartment again at 7 in the morning, looking at a laptop screen filled with bank statements and email printouts spread across her dining table. Adeline was at her grandmother's house for the weekend, which meant I had time I usually didn't have. Emily had made coffee without asking if I wanted any, just set a mug next to me, and went back to her own work on the other side of the table. She was highlighting sections of the scammer's emails, building what looked like a case file. The wire is set to process Monday at 3 p.m., she said. That gives us 72 hours. Your mother, Eleanor, right? Does she know you're doing this? No, and she can't know. If she finds out I'm interfering, she'll cut me off completely. Emily's jaw was tight. We haven't had an easy relationship. I built my career, bought my own place, made my own money. She thinks I judge her for staying home, for not having the same kind of power I do. This man, David, he makes her feel seen in a way she hasn't felt in years. If I come at this the wrong way, she'll choose him over me just to prove I can't control her. I understood that kind of pride. The kind that made you double down on bad decisions just to prove you were the one making them. We need to prove David isn't real, I said. Not just tell her. Prove it in a way she can't deny. I've already tried reverse image searches on his photos. Nothing. Because he's probably using photos from a private social media account or professional database. I pulled up one of the images on my phone and zoomed in on the background. Look at this. The office window behind him. You can see part of a building reflection. That's the Shard in London. But look at the angle and the weather. This photo was taken in late spring based on the light and the trees. He told your mother he's been in London continuously for the past 6 months, right? Emily leaned in. Yes. He said he couldn't leave because of a major deal. Pull up the other photos. Let's check the metadata. She did. Most had been stripped of metadata, which was smart, but 2 of them still had timestamp information embedded. One was from March 2019. Another from July 2021. He's using old photos, Emily said slowly. Probably stolen from someone's archive. Or bought from a stock photo site. I opened a reverse image search specifically for professional stock photos and uploaded the clearest image. 3 minutes later, we had a match. The photo was from a premium stock photo collection called Executive Lifestyle, sold by a website based in Toronto. Emily stared at the screen. He bought a stock photo of a businessman and used it to steal from my mother. It's worse than that. I clicked through the other photos in the same stock collection. Look, he's used at least 4 different people from this same photo set. He just cropped them differently. Her hands had gone very still on the table. She sent him $40,000 based on photos anyone can buy for $12 each. The money's already gone from her account? Yes, those transfers cleared. It's the big one, the retirement savings, that we can still stop. I sat back and looked at the timeline. Monday at 3 p.m. Today was Friday morning. The bank would be closed over the weekend, which meant we had Monday to work with. Here's what we do, I said. We need to get your mother into the bank on Monday with you. Not to stop the transfer. If we frame it that way, she'll resist. We need another reason that feels like it's her idea. What reason? I thought about it. Does she have any other accounts there? Safety deposit box? Old CD that's maturing? She has a safety deposit box. My father's military medals and some old bonds. Perfect. You call her and suggest she should review the contents for insurance purposes. Make it sound like routine estate planning. Get her to agree to a Monday appointment and book it for 2 p.m., an hour before the wire processes. And then what? Even if we're both at the bank, she's not going to just cancel the wire because I show her stock photos. She'll say David explained that he had to use temporary photos for privacy reasons. She was right. Scam victims rationalized everything because admitting the truth meant admitting they'd been fooled. We need a bank officer to be the one who shows her the proof, I said. Someone with authority who she doesn't see as trying to control her. And we need the proof to be undeniable, not just photos, but a pattern of fraud that the bank can flag as suspicious activity. Emily started typing on her laptop. I can pull records of similar scams from our news archive. We've covered at least a dozen romance fraud cases in the past 2 years. If I can show the bank a pattern that matches David's exact methodology. They might freeze the account pending fraud investigation, I finished. The bank protects itself first. If they see clear evidence of a scam in progress, they're legally required to pause the transaction. For the first time since she'd knocked on my door 3 nights ago, Emily smiled. It changed her whole face, made her look younger, less armored. You're good at this, she said. I'm just good at finding leaks and tracing them to the source. I finished my coffee. Same skill set, different application. She studied me for a moment. Why did you stop? Stop what? Being a plumber. You clearly know what you're doing. You could be making real money instead of washing cars. The question landed like a fist to the sternum. I looked down at my hands again. The same hands that used to install gas lines in commercial buildings, that could thread pipe and solder copper and read blueprints. The same hands that had been too slow to save my wife when she collapsed in our kitchen 2 years ago while I was at a job site 40 minutes away. I had other priorities, I said. Emily didn't push. She just nodded like she understood that some doors stayed closed for good reasons. We spent the rest of the morning building the case. Emily pulled news footage and reports from her station's archive. Interviews with scam victims, FBI warnings, statistics on international fraud rings. I focused on the technical details, comparing David's messages to known scammer templates, documenting every inconsistency in his story, creating a timeline that showed the manipulation tactics. By noon, we had a folder thick enough to convince any reasonable person. The question was whether Eleanor would be reasonable when her heart was involved. "I should go," I said, gathering my notes. "I need to pick up Adeline from my mother-in-law's before dinner." "Wait." Emily stood and pulled out her wallet. "I'm paying you for your time. This isn't neighbor stuff anymore. You've spent hours on this." "I don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" The question hung in the air between us. What did I want? I wanted to go back 2 years and take a different job that day. I wanted my daughter to stop having nightmares about her mother falling. I wanted to feel something other than the constant low-grade numbness that had become my baseline. "I want your mother to keep her money," I said finally. "That's enough." Emily put her wallet away slowly, but her expression had shifted into something I couldn't quite read. "Monday, at 1 p.m., I'll meet you in the building lobby, and we'll drive to the bank together. I'm telling my mother it's about the safety deposit box review, and you're coming as... what? My friend? My plumber?" "Your neighbor who knows about estate documentation," I said. "Keep it vague. The less she knows about me, the less threatening I'll seem." "Zachary." She said my name like she was testing it. "Thank you. For all of this." I nodded and left before the conversation could go anywhere else. The weekend crawled by. I took Adeline to the zoo on Saturday and watched her press her face against the glass of the ape habitat, completely absorbed. She looked so much like her mother in those moments, the same dark eyes, the same way of tilting her head when she was thinking. "Daddy, why don't the monkeys live in houses like us?" she asked. "They're happier in spaces that feel like home to them," I said. "Sometimes what makes us happy doesn't look like what other people expect." And she nodded seriously, like this made perfect sense, and moved on to the elephants. Sunday night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Monday, about walking into that bank with Emily and trying to save someone I'd never met from losing everything. The weight of responsibility felt familiar and unwelcome at the same time. At 6 a.m. Monday morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Emily. "My mother agreed to 2 p.m. appointment. She thinks it's about reviewing the box contents for insurance. She doesn't know you're coming." I texted back, "See you at 1 p.m. in the lobby." The day stretched out like a held breath. I dropped Adeline at daycare and went to work at the car wash, but I couldn't focus. Marcus, my manager, noticed me standing idle with a spray hose. "You all right, man?" he asked. "Just tired?" "You've been tired for 2 years." He took the hose from me. "Take the afternoon. Whatever's got you distracted, go deal with it." I didn't argue. At 12:45 p.m., I changed into clean clothes, dark jeans and a button-down shirt that I'd bought for my wife's funeral and hadn't worn since. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. Somewhere under the exhaustion and the weight of grief was the man I used to be. I wondered if Emily's mother would see through me, see the failure and the broken pieces. Emily was waiting in the lobby at exactly 1 p.m., wearing a navy dress and heels, looking every inch the successful professional. She had the case folder in a leather bag. "Ready?" she asked. "No, but let's go anyway." We took her car, a sensible Honda that surprised me given her salary, and drove in silence through Georgetown traffic toward the bank. The First National branch was an older building with marble floors and high ceilings, the kind of place that still felt like money had weight and consequence. Eleanor was already there, standing near the customer service desk. She was in her mid-60s, well-dressed in slacks and a cardigan, with Emily's same sharp eyes but softer edges. When she saw Emily approaching, her expression tightened. "I didn't know you were bringing someone," Eleanor said. "This is Zachary. He lives in my building. He has experience with estate documentation and offered to help review the contents." Emily's voice was smooth, professional. "I thought an extra set of eyes would be useful." Eleanor looked at me with polite suspicion. "That's kind of you?" "I'm happy to help," I said, keeping my voice neutral and deferential. A bank officer led us to a private room and brought the safety deposit box. Eleanor opened it carefully, pulling out old savings bonds, military medals, and a stack of photographs. She handled each item with reverence, and I could see Emily's jaw tighten as her mother showed us a picture of her father in uniform. "These bonds matured years ago," I said, looking at the dates. "You could cash them in if you wanted. They're not earning interest anymore." "I've been meaning to do that," Eleanor said. "I just haven't gotten around to it." Emily glanced at the wall clock. 2:35 p.m. 25 minutes until the wire transfer processed. "Mom," Emily said carefully, "while we're here, maybe you should check on your other accounts too. Make sure everything is in order." "Why would I need to do that?" "Just routine. When was the last time you reviewed your statements?" Eleanor's expression shifted into defensive mode. "I check my accounts online every week. Everything is fine." "What about your retirement account?" Emily pressed. "Have you made any changes to that recently?" The air in the room went cold. Eleanor slowly put down the photograph she'd been holding and looked at her daughter with a hardness that made me want to leave. "You went through my accounts," Eleanor said quietly. "That's what this is about." "Mom, I'm worried. You had no right." Eleanor stood up. "I knew you'd do this. I knew you couldn't stand to see me happy." "This isn't about happiness," Emily said. "It's about David. He's not real." "You don't know anything about him." "I know he's a scammer using stock photos and stealing your money." Eleanor grabbed her purse. "I'm leaving." "Mom, please." "Ma'am," I said quietly, and both women turned to look at me. "I understand you're angry, but would you be willing to look at something before you go? Just one piece of evidence. If you still want to leave after that, we won't stop you." Eleanor hesitated, her hand on the door. "What evidence?" I pulled out my phone and opened the stock photo website. "The photos David sent to you, they're professional stock images that anyone can purchase. Here's the exact photo set he used. Different men, but all from the same commercial collection." I showed her the screen. She stared at it for a long moment, her face going pale. "That doesn't prove anything," she said, but her voice had lost its certainty. "Maybe he had to use those for privacy reasons. His job is sensitive." "Mrs. Coleman," I interrupted gently, "I'm going to show you 10 other women's stories. They all met men who used these exact same photos, these exact same stories about investment deals and sick relatives and travel problems. The FBI documented this specific scam pattern last year." I pulled up the news archive Emily had compiled. Case after case of women who'd lost money to romance scammers using identical tactics. Eleanor sat back down slowly, reading through each one. "The wire transfer," she whispered. "When does it—" "In 17 minutes, Emily said softly. "But we can stop it right now if you ask the bank to freeze the transaction pending fraud investigation." Eleanor looked at her daughter, and something crumbled in her expression. "I was so lonely," she said. "After your father died, I felt invisible. And David made me feel seen again. He listened. He cared about my day, my thoughts. How do I come back from being this stupid?" Emily knelt beside her mother's chair and took her hand. "You're not stupid, you're human. And these people are professionals at finding exactly what we need to hear. I sent him $40,000 already. That money's gone. isn't it? Probably, I said. But we can save the rest. And we can report this to the FBI so they can try to track down the network. Eleanor looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. Why are you here? You don't know me. Because your daughter asked for help, I said, and because stopping this is the right thing to do. Eleanor nodded slowly and turned to Emily. I'm sorry for not listening. We'll deal with all of that later, Emily said firmly. Right now, we need to get to the customer service desk and freeze that account. We spent the next 2 hours at the bank, while Eleanor filed the fraud report and the bank officer initiated a security freeze. The wire transfer was stopped with 4 minutes to spare. Eleanor sat through the entire process with quiet dignity, answering every question, signing every form. When we finally left the bank, it was almost 5 p.m. and starting to rain. Eleanor pulled Emily into a tight hug in the parking lot. I'll call you tomorrow, Eleanor said. We'll talk. Really talk. Emily nodded, unable to speak. Eleanor turned to me. Thank you, Zachary. I don't know why you helped, but I'm grateful. Take care of yourself, Mrs. Coleman. She got in her car and drove away, leaving Emily and me standing in the rain. We did it, Emily said softly. You did it. I just showed up. She turned to face me, rain dripping from her hair. You showed up when it mattered. That's everything. We drove back to the apartment building in silence. When we pulled into the parking garage, Emily turned off the engine but didn't move to get out. My mother said something true in that room, she said, about being lonely, about feeling invisible. I waited. I built this whole life where I'm in control, where I don't need anyone, where I can't be hurt because I don't let people close enough to matter. She gripped the steering wheel. But the truth is, I'm exactly like my mother. I'm lonely. I'm exhausted. And I don't know how to let people in without being terrified they'll become another thing I have to protect myself from. You let me in, I said quietly, because you didn't ask for anything. You just helped. No agenda, no expectations. She looked at me finally. Who does that? Someone who knows what it's like to need help and not get it. The confession landed between us like a live wire. Emily reached across the console and took my hand, just held it, no pressure, no demand. Your wife, she said. That's what you meant about other priorities. She died 2 years ago. Sudden cardiac arrest while I was at a job site. Our daughter watched her fall and couldn't help. I got the call 40 minutes too late. I stared at our joined hands. I quit plumbing the next week. Couldn't make myself go back to buildings and blueprints and schedules that kept me away from the people who needed me. So you took a job where you could pick up your daughter at 4 o'clock every day. Yeah. That's not failure, Zachary. That's love. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the same exhaustion I carried, the same weight of trying to keep everything together alone. But I also saw something else. The possibility that maybe we didn't have to keep doing this by ourselves. I should go, I said, but I didn't move. Or you could come upstairs, Emily said. I'll make dinner. We can just exist in the same space for a while. No fixing anything, no crisis management, just two people who helped each other being quietly grateful for it. It would have been easy to say no. To go back to my apartment and my routine and my carefully maintained distance from feeling anything. But somewhere in the past 4 days, something had shifted. Emily had needed me, and I'd been there, and the weight of responsibility hadn't crushed me. It had reminded me that I was still capable of showing up. Okay, I said. We went upstairs to her apartment. She made pasta while I sat at the counter, and told her about Adeline, about the zoo, and the questions she asked, and the nightmares that were slowly getting less frequent. Emily told me about the news station and the impossible pressure of ratings, and the fear that she was becoming the kind of person who only knew how to be hard. We ate dinner at her kitchen table, and it felt like the most normal thing in the world. When I finally left at 9 p.m., she walked me to the door. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." "You already thanked me." "I know, but I'm going to keep saying it until you believe you deserve to hear it." I left before I could do something stupid like kiss her. Over the next week, a routine formed. Emily would knock on my door around 7, 3 sharp raps that I'd started listening for, and we'd have coffee together before she left for work. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we just sat in comfortable silence while I read Adeline a story and Emily answered emails on her phone. On Thursday, I fixed the sink properly. She didn't ask me to. I just showed up with the right parts and tools and rebuilt the entire assembly while she watched from the doorway. "You miss it," she said, "working with your hands." "Sometimes." "What if you started doing it again? Just small jobs, nights and weekends." I tightened the last connection and tested the seal. Perfect. I don't have the insurance or licensing to work independently anymore, and I can't go back to commercial jobs with the hours they require. What about residential? Small repairs for people who need help and can't afford the big companies. I sat back and looked at her. "You've been thinking about this." "I've been thinking about a lot of things." She came and sat on the floor next to me, close enough that our shoulders touched. "Like how you showed up for my mother without hesitation, and how you've been showing up for me every morning without me having to ask, and how maybe we're both better at taking care of other people than we are at letting anyone take care of us." "Emily, I'm not asking for anything," she said quickly. "I just wanted you to know that you don't have to keep punishing yourself. You're allowed to be good at something again. You're allowed to feel something again." I looked at her. At the face I'd started memorizing without meaning to. At the strength and vulnerability she carried in equal measure. And I felt the careful numbness I'd built start to crack. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Of caring about someone and losing them again. Of letting Adeline get attached to someone who might leave. Of being the guy who couldn't save the first person he loved and probably can't protect anyone else either." Emily took my hand. "I'm scared too. Of trusting someone and having them use it against me. Of building something real and watching it get weaponized. Of being vulnerable and finding out I was right to protect myself all along." She squeezed my fingers. "But I think we're already past the point of pretending we don't care." She was right. Somewhere between the broken sink and the bank meeting and the morning coffee, I'd started looking forward to seeing her, started planning my day around the possibility of 3 sharp knocks on my door. "What do we do about it?" I asked. "We could try being honest. No games, no performance, just 2 people who've been through hard things figuring out if they can build something good together." She smiled slightly. "Starting with you admitting you want to kiss me right now." "I do," I said, "but I'm also thinking about Adeline, and whether it's fair to bring someone new into her life when she's still processing losing her mother." "That's a good thing to think about. It means you're a good father." Emily stood and offered me her hand. "So we go slow. We keep doing what we're doing. Coffee in the morning, dinners when it works, helping each other with the small stuff. And when you're ready to introduce me to Adeline, you let me know. No pressure, no timeline." I let her pull me to my feet. We stood close in her kitchen, and I could smell her shampoo and see the tiny scar on her chin that I'd never noticed before. "I'm not good at this," I said, "at being with someone. I'm out of practice and probably going to mess it up. Good thing I like fixing things, too." This time when I left, I kissed her. Just a brief touch of lips, soft and careful and full of promise. When I pulled back, she was smiling. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked. "Yeah, same time tomorrow." 3 weeks later, Emily knocked on my door at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. When I opened it, she was holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing jeans and a sweatshirt instead of her usual professional armor. "I have a proposition," she said. "It's 6 in the morning." "I know, but I couldn't sleep, and I've been thinking." She handed me one of the coffees. "My mother wants to meet you properly, as in have dinner and say thank you for saving her retirement, and I want you to bring Adeline." My stomach dropped. "Emily, I know we said slow, but Adeline's going to figure out eventually that I'm around a lot, and I'd rather meet her on purpose, in a safe context, than have her wonder why the neighbor lady keeps showing up at weird hours." She was right. Adeline had already asked twice why the pretty lady from down the hall was at our apartment for breakfast. "What do I tell her?" I asked. "About who you are?" "Tell her I'm your friend, because I am. Everything else, whether we become more, whether this works long term, we'll figure out as we go. But I want to be someone she can trust. Someone who shows up." I thought about it. About my daughter, who'd watched her mother die and spent 2 years learning that the world wasn't always safe. About the risk of bringing someone new into her small, carefully protected life. About the greater risk of teaching her that love wasn't worth trying for. "Okay," I said. "Dinner at your mother's." "When?" "Tomorrow night, 5 p.m. She hesitated. "And Zachary? I'm scared too. Of meeting your daughter and having her hate me, or of getting attached and having you decide I'm not worth the complication. But I think you're worth being scared for." I pulled her into my apartment and kissed her properly this time. No hesitation. No holding back. She tasted like coffee and courage. When we finally broke apart, she was breathless. "That's new. I'm practicing being honest," I said. "And honestly, I've wanted to do that since the night you knocked on my door about a broken sink." "Noted. Feel free to practice more often." The next evening, I dressed Adeline in her favorite purple dress and tried to explain who Emily was without overwhelming her with adult concepts she didn't need. "Emily is my friend from the building," I said, brushing her hair. "We're going to have dinner at her mother's house. You'll like Miss Eleanor. She has a cat." "Will Mama be there?" Adeline asked quietly. The question gutted me like it always did. "No, baby. Mama is in heaven, remember? But she'd be happy that we're making new friends." Adeline nodded seriously. "Okay, Daddy." Eleanor's house was in Chevy Chase, a brick colonial with a garden that looked like it came from a magazine. Emily met us at the door, and I watched carefully as Adeline studied her. "Hi, Adeline," Emily said, crouching down to eye level. "I'm Emily. Your dad helped my mom with something really important, and we wanted to say thank you. Do you like cats? Because my mom's cat is very friendly and loves meeting new people." Adeline's eyes lit up. "I love cats?" "Perfect. Come on, I'll introduce you." I watched Emily lead my daughter inside, and something in my chest loosened. Eleanor appeared in the doorway with a knowing smile. "She's good with children," Eleanor said. "Yeah," I said. "She is." Dinner was easier than I'd expected. Adeline sat between Emily and Eleanor, completely absorbed in stories about the cat and questions about what Emily did at the news station. Emily answered every question seriously, never talking down to her, and I watched my daughter bloom under the attention. After dinner, Eleanor took Adeline to the garden to look at the flowers, leaving Emily and me alone in the dining room. "She's wonderful," Emily said softly. "You've done an incredible job with her." "I'm terrified every day that I'm screwing it up." "That's how you know you're doing it right." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Thank you for trusting me with this. With her. Thank you for being someone worth trusting." When we left at 7:30, Adeline fell asleep in the car before we made it out of the neighborhood. I carried her inside and put her to bed. then found Emily waiting in the hallway. "She liked you," I said. "I liked her too. She's smart and kind and asks really good questions about how news cameras work." "So, where do we go from here?" Emily stepped closer, her hands finding my waist. "We keep showing up. For each other, for Adeline, for the life we're building one morning, coffee at a time. And maybe someday soon you stop going back to your apartment at night." "That's a big step. I know, but I'm ready when you are." She kissed me softly. No pressure, just possibility. I held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair and feeling the steady beat of her heart against my chest. For the first time in 2 years, the future didn't feel like something to survive. It felt like something to build. "Same time tomorrow?" I asked. She smiled against my shoulder. "Same time tomorrow. Always." Real love isn't about saving someone or being saved. It's about two people who've survived hard things choosing to show up for each other anyway. Emily didn't need me to rescue her. She needed someone to stand beside her when she rescued herself. And I didn't need her to fix me. I needed someone to remind me that being broken doesn't mean being worthless. The truth is, healthy love looks nothing like the stories we've been told. It's not dramatic passion or grand gestures. It's consistent presence. It's 3 knocks on a door at 7 a.m. It's fixing a sink without being asked and making coffee without keeping score. It's showing up when it's inconvenient and staying when it gets hard. If you're looking for someone, don't look for fireworks. Look for the person who makes ordinary moments feel significant. The one who sees your wounds and doesn't run. The one who trusts you with their fears and believes you when you offer your truth. That's the kind of love worth building. That's the kind of love that lasts. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.